What's going on, gamers? My name is Stitch, and in today's video, I was initially going to be making a tier list, but 3.3a is pretty much right around the corner. So I was thinking about other types of content I can make instead to help you guys, since I think I'll probably wait out on the tier list until maybe like the new champions come out, because I think we're expecting things like Sion and Kassadin soon, and that'll probably shake up the meta, maybe in mid lane as well. So figured I'd wait a little longer, see how 3.3a affects the meta, then make a tier list next patch. But today we're actually making a different type of video where I'm going to be giving you guys 2 champions for each role that I think would be the best if you want to be climbing, if you want to be getting up and ranked. These would be basically the 2 best champions to go for. Most of these champions should still be pretty effective on the next patch. Some of them are getting tweaked a little bit, but I think for the most part, all of them will still be very good next patch. So if you're looking for kind of 2 champions for your role that will help you, will just be some of the best picks that you could choose. Getting better at these champions and improving these champions will help you get better at the game and kind of be playing the meta. And these just, the champions have the highest impact. These are your S++++ champions, as good old Darkbreaker would say. So kicking off on the Baron lane, we're going to be looking at Riven first of all. Riven's still just super phenomenal. She did get a recent change where she lost some of her shields. I think it was either the scaling or the flat. But she lost a bit of it's not really damage, I can't think of the number. A bit of value, I guess, on her third ability. But instead they gave her base HP, which is actually a lot more effective in the early game. It makes her early laning even more powerful than it already was. Riven, obviously, super strong early game trading, pretty good scaling, can struggle against like some of the more like heavier range comps, champs like Orianna or like peel supports like Janna, Nami. These champions can kind of mess with her a little bit, but if you get her combos down, practice her a lot, especially I'd definitely recommend taking her into the practice tool and kind of getting familiar with the way like her first and third ability interact, getting used to some of the combos, like just doing the third ability into like different parts of the first ability to dash across the map pretty quickly. But yeah, her lane phase is super strong. Early trading very effective. Pretty much wins every single matchup in the game. Only the hard ones are stuff like Renekton. Maybe Shen can be a bit difficult because he's really strong in the first few levels, but you should be able to get an advantage in the matchup as you scale a bit. Build-wise, you're going to be looking at this kind of build. Black Cleaver first is pretty much a staple. In some matchups, you can go for the Sundra rush. I think if you're against a champion that wants to rush Sundra, that makes Sundra a bit better for you as well. Because you're building a bit less HP and kind of matching them in terms of like how your champions are trading. You're going to be keeping up with the sustain. So if you are playing as a champion that is going to rush Sundra, you can also opt to rush him for the Sundra. Don't go Death Stance, obviously, if you're not against an AD champion. You can save it till a bit later. As long as you're against at least 2 or 3 AD champions, you probably almost certainly want a Death Stance in your build. But you don't have to build it this early if you're not in a melee matchup. As far as enchants go, Stasis is going to be the standard. QSS is a lot better this patch. You could definitely choose it into some of the more like heavier CC matchups. If you're against like a Morgana, Ahri kind of composition, or Lux, champions like this, where if you have a really good QSS timing, you could just break through and get into the backline. And then also Protobelt is an option. It's a little bit more aggressive. Not something I'd recommend. It is doable, especially if you're really fed. You can kind of just use it to quickly get on top of people and take them down. But I think with the mobility you have and Flash, you should be able to generally reach and enter teamfights pretty effectively, and it's better to have kind of like another defensive tool like Stasis or like QSS. Once you get past this initial core 3, Black Cleaver, Death Stance, Sundra, you're almost always going to want these 3 items every single game. You have a bit more variety of choices. You have the GA, always a great option, gives you another life, obviously helps you kind of trade 1 for 1 and then stay relevant in a team fight. You could also go for Sterak's. Sterak's scales really well. Honestly, I think a lot of her spells are bonus AD. And I don't think Sterak counts as bonus AD, so she doesn't get the full benefit of it, but obviously still a great tanking item, especially if they have a lot of mixed damage, or like AD heavily, but you don't want to build more armor because you've already got so much. Sterak's is a great choice to get a bit more HP. If you're looking for MR options, Force of Nature is fine. Spirit Visage is really good. Great synergy with Sundra, especially if you have other healing champs on your team. You can look at the Spirit Visage. Past that, you can get a Moor, or like an early Hexdrinker. That is a good option in these AP matchups if you're against like an Akali, if you're against a Kennen, Gragas for some reason in the Baron lane. Picking up an early Hexdrinker after your first purchase, normally the Black Cleaver. So Black Cleaver, Hexdrinker, Mercury Treads as well if it's a good game will make you really tanky in those matchups and give you a lot of early game power. As far as runes go, we're still using the Conqueror. Conqueror did get reworked, so it's no longer the bonus damage. Instead, it's healing at max stacks, so you get Physical Vamp and Magic Vamp. Obviously, Riven doesn't really make any use of Magic Vamp at all, but the Physical Vamp is still very useful against heroes, so we are going to stick with the Conqueror. It does stack it really quickly, and it does give her even more sustain, which modern day Riven does really play into with kind of this Death Stance Sundra combo. It's basically just sustain is the name of the game. She ends up having just wicked sustain, especially at T-Bites. If you ever like run in to get a kill, proc your death studs, you you get another round of cooldowns. I'm sure you've seen it in your games where Riven just completely pops off and takes over the game. It gets really crazy. For domination, we're taking Triumph. I think Triumph is just the best option here. Since Brutal has been nerfed, no longer gives her AD for her base abilities. So you're pretty much going to want to go for Triumph. Again, just playing into that sustain idea. When you get a takedown, you get the Death Stance plus Triumph combo. You heal for so much, and then you can just take over team fights. I think your Resolve rune, it's pretty much going to be matchup dependent. I think Adaptive Carapace is your safe choice. Most of the time, you can't really go wrong with Adaptive. It's pretty much always going to work. If you are looking for more specific options, you can use Second Wind or Bone Plating. Both of these are really good as well. Second Wind is better against kind of like matchups that either poke you or do a lot of sustained damage. For example, Darius Second Wind is actually surprisingly very effective because it will keep reapplying during his bleed ticks. If you take a trade with Darius and he leaves some bleed stacks on you, you can keep getting the Second Wind proc and heal a lot that way. Also against things like Camille, for example. Camille normally tries to poke you with her second ability, so Second Wind can be pretty good in this matchup as well. Bone Plating is really good against all-in matchups. Stuff like maybe Shen or Set. These kind of champs that when they commit to a trade, they just go in, they're going to have to hit you in a short burst and then back off. So any kind of quick trade champions, she can be pretty effective with the Bone Plating for. Helps you win the early partial of the trade, and then you can chase them down with your high mobility and prevent them from, getting away with a short trade, which these champions normally like to do. For Inspiration Rune, Sweet Tooth is fine. Pretty much always going to be valuable. You can't ever go wrong with it. If your matchup is pretty free, you can look for Hunter Genius. Gives you a little bit more haste, especially once you start getting those stacks and collecting kills. Your team fight, your overall haste will be a lot higher, which will help you in team fights because you'll have really, really low cooldowns. And you can also look for Demolish. If you do again think it's going to be a pretty easy matchup and you don't want to look for the haste, you want to look for more swift pushing power, Demolish can help you take those early plates, get an early snowball lead going, and then use that to your advantage to kind of generate an early gold advantage. Summoner spells, Flash Barrier is an easy standard. Flash Ignite also works. Flash Exhaust also works. Can be matchup dependent. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, Ignite will give you some great kill pressure in lane, especially with your early damage. Personally, I find you don't often need the Ignite to secure kills, and having the barrier just gives you even more safety, lets you be even tankier in team fights and kind of take advantage of the way Riven's kit works, and just get the maximum out of those rotations. So for me, personally prefer barrier. Ignite's totally fine against maybe like champions you struggle to reach, like maybe Jace. Exhaust can be pretty good as well. Just kind of like close the gap and use it as an aggressive opening and not take as much damage while you're reaching these champions. So all of these summons are great. Riven just has a lot of great options. Definitely the premium Baron lane to go for. The second Baron lane I'd recommend is Shen. I did mention champion's getting nerfed next patch. Shen is getting a bit of a nerf on 3.3a, but I still think the champion will be extremely fine. Since 3.3, when the old kind of cooldowns were reworked, Shen's ultimate actually got like 20 seconds lower at every rank, and I think since then he's been really, really strong, and he's a little bit sleeper in solo queue. I definitely recommend adding him to your repertoire, and it's one of the two champions I'm recommending if you're not playing Shen already. I think he's actually really, really great this patch. You're going to want to go for the Sunderer first. You can opt for the Balmy Cinder to get a little bit more wave clear, but you almost always want to finish Sunderer straight away. Don't get baited into thinking you have to finish the entire Sunfire, because this really delays your champion's power. It kind of stagnates your strength. And his early trading is really, really phenomenal. And Sunderer plays into kind of his actually really powerful early mid-game that he has, and really enables you to actually match a lot of champions in side lane. Shen is actually really, really strong in a lot of 1v1 scenarios where you kind of wouldn't expect it, especially if you get an advantage. I did mention his strong early game. Levels 1 through 3, his trading is extremely powerful. And you could definitely surprise a lot of people by getting solo kills or kind of just knocking them out of lane, and they won't expect it because it's just a tank, dude. It's just a tank, man. Whatever. Like, what's Shen gonna do? Kill me? And then, yeah, you kill them. So, yeah. Balmy Cinder into Sunderer is a really great opening. If you don't need the early pushing power of like a Balmy Cinder, you could just go straight into the Sunderer. You do definitely want to get the Sunfire second. If you try Shen without Sunfire, you have the most painful game of your life as you sit here smacking minions the whole game because the champion has no wave clear. None of his abilities work on minions, so you definitely need to build something to supplement that. So I'd recommend the Sunfire Cape for sure. After that, you could just look at general tank items. Thornmail's great. He's a really good anti-heal applier, because obviously his taunt will apply the immobilization effect of Thornmail. Really easy to take advantage of that in teamfights. Spirit Visage is a great magic resist item if you're looking for other options. You have Force of Nature, gives you a little bit more mobility. The move speed helps you get into fights a little bit more effectively. And then you got stuff like Randuin's, Warmogs, just pretty much general tank items. You really kind of have to think for yourself here and just analyze the enemy comp. They have 3 AD champions. Then you're going to want to look for a bit more HP and armor, but maybe pick up 1 magic resist item to help, like, supplement against MR. If they have a mixed composition, you're probably going to want 1 resist item of each, and then you're just going to want to stack HP, because it's, like, the most effective way to tank in those kind of situations. And then, obviously, if they have a magic-heavy composition, you're going to want to get 2 or 3 MR items. And then maybe 1 MR item just to supplement for, like, whatever physical damage they do have. For enchant, pretty much going to be looking at redemption most of the time, to be honest. Make sure to pay close attention if your support is getting redemption. If your support is getting redemption, you're not going to want to get it. If they are, you can also look at stuff like Locket. It's going to be pretty fine on Shen. And even stuff like Teleport or Proto Belt give you a little bit more utility. Teleport obviously helps you reach the map outside of using your ultimate. And then Proto Belt helps you in teamfights, extend the range of your Shadow Dash, help catch enemies. And then also Gargoyle Stoneplate. Really, really solid this patch, honestly. The Gargoyle rework is really, really good. So if you do feel like you need to be a little bit bulkier, generally not 100% true on Shen, because he's pretty tanky as is. But if you do feel like to be a little bit bulkier, you can look at the Stoneplate as an option. Definitely can't go wrong with that. But I think Redemption is generally pretty safe to go for. Redemption and Stoneplate, I'd say probably the main 2. And then, yeah, Locket as like a 3rd option if you already have a Redemption and you don't feel like you need the Stoneplate. Or, yeah, just as another choice. Runes-wise, we're taking Grasp. Grasp just really fits Shen's trading pattern in lane. The way you basically want to trade with Shen is trying to position near enemy champions. But basically, Shen in the early levels is like a big do not approach zone. If the enemy is a melee and they are going to stand near you, you're going to want to try and use your first ability, pull it through them if you can, and then just smack them, basically. And then obviously doing this play pattern, you're going to have the Grasp available, especially if you're hitting the minion wave. You definitely have the Grasp up, and then you can kind of keep this trade going, get a chunky Grasp proc. And you'll just, I definitely give it a try level 1-2 on Shen. Just try and hit the enemy using your first ability, especially if you can pull it through them, which does give you more bonus damage. And you'll see just how much damage you deal. It is pretty nuts. And Grasp definitely plays towards this playstyle. Domination Tree, once again, Triumph. Pretty much there's no real good red runes for Shen here. You can use the weakness, I suppose, but he only has the Shadow Dash to really proc it. So he doesn't have great options with regards to red runes. So Triumph, once again, getting takedowns in fights will heal you pretty dramatically. For green rune, pretty much same as Riven. Adaptive is a great default, but there are definitely matchups where you want second wind or bone plating. Similar idea as to what I said in the Riven portion. Just think about your matchups. If they're all-in champions, even Riven herself, for example, you can use the bone plating to mitigate a large portion of her damage. And then for inspiration, I'd recommend Demolish as a default. If you think you're going to have a hard lane phase, Sweet Tooth is also an option. But because with Shen, you're generally going to be playing the side lane, playing away from your team and the next objective they're going to play to get maximum value of your ultimate. This will often leave you in a lot of situations where you're pretty much alone. And then you could use Demolish to kind of like punch through. And since you're putting so much HP anyway, you get a lot of value from the rune. Some of the spells I pretty much always recommend Ignite Barrier. Oh, sorry, Flash Ignite. If you really think you're going to have a hard lane phase, maybe you're going to get camped, you can opt for the Barrier, but Shen is generally really tanky, really hard to take down, and Ignite gives you more solo kill pressure, which he does kind of need. Does need that little bit of extra damage, unlike Riven, where she kind of just kills anybody. Shen, you're probably going to need a little bit of extra oomph. So, yeah, I'd say opt for the Ignite most of the time. As far as playstyle goes, yeah, you're just going to want to play the side lane a lot. Try to use your early game power to get an advantage and get ahead of the enemy Baron. And then, like I said, once you get kind of that Sunderer, Sunfire online, you'd be surprised at how many champions you can kind of deal with pretty effectively, especially if you play it well. Try to have good map awareness. Be hyper aware of your teammates when your ultimate will be valuable. But the cooldown is much lower, so you have a lot more freedom in how you use it and how often you use it. The other factor to consider is think about objective timings and when the next objective is coming, and you want to be on the opposite side of the map, basically. If Dragon is coming, you want to be the opposite lane from Dragon, try to get some split push pressure. So if the enemy team doesn't get a good engage or, doesn't get there in a timely fashion, you are getting value from split pushing the other side of the map and collecting waves, and the enemy Baron then it doesn't have as much freedom to take, because then you'll just alter the fight and then win the 5-4, and the enemy Baron then won't have that opportunity. So I think Shen is really, really great right now. Would definitely recommend it for your climb, because as well it's picking a tank, right? It's also kind of filling a niche that often isn't filled in solo queue. But he still has a lot of power in duels and 1v1s and playmaking abilities, so it doesn't just feel like you're sitting there doing nothing. You could definitely get a lot of value out of this champion if you master it. So moving on to mid lane, first recommendation is gonna be the Ahri. Ahri's been popping off this patch to 3.3. She did get the PC style rework, which has given her the Death Stance style regeneration on her passive now when she gets a takedown, as well as giving her an additional charge of Spirit Rush whenever she gets a takedown as well. So whenever she consumes Essence, she gets an additional charge of Spirit Rush. Another big buff is that her Foxfire AI was kind of fixed. This is just made way more effective. If you played Ahri before, you play Ahri now, you'll feel just how much better the W is at just like giving you free opportunities to kind of, or just giving you better flexibility in fights. The way it hits certain enemies and prioritizes lower HP targets and hits champions instead of hitting minions and random raptors in the jungle and whatnot. It's basically just way smarter now and way more effective. Build-wise, you're going to want to watch the Ludens, of course. Ludens is a great item for any mage champion. Ahri is no exception. Gives you great wave clear, great early game. Going into the Rabadons. From this point, if you're kind of ahead in the game or you're feeling pretty even, Infinity Orb is always a great option. Really increase your burst. If the enemy is building magic resist, make sure to keep an eye out. You might need to get the Void Staff before Infinity Orb, or you just won't be doing any damage. But mostly it depends on the squishier members. If the enemy support is building MR, don't feel as pressured to like rush a Void Staff, but it can still be pretty effective if you are kind of having to play front to back and kill the enemy support a lot. Once you get those kind of two core penetrations items online, I personally actually like the Lich Bane. I think it actually plays really well with Ahri's playstyle nowadays, especially with how much fight freedom you have. With extra charges of Spirit Rush, it's way easier to get into position to kind of auto-attack aggressively and get more spells out in an offensive way. So I think actually Lich Bane is a lot easier to play with now because you just have so many spells going off in a fight, and if you can kind of keep alive and stay on the outskirts, you can get a lot of procs of Lich Bane and you know, the Sheen effect Spellblade throughout a fight. So I actually really like it with the new Ahri, so I definitely recommend it as a last item just to kind of give you a power spike buff. If you do need other options, Banshee's Veil, Crystalline Reflector, these are great in-game. If you're against a really heavy AD composition, 4 AD champions, for example, you could just go Illusions, Rabadons, Crystalline Reflector, same idea. You have so many spells that you're just constantly having Reflector up, and you actually end up really, really, really tanky. Enchant-wise, I'd recommend, again, Stasis or QSS. Protobelt is an option, but I'm not as much of a fan since the cost increased, to be honest. I think it just doesn't feel as nice to build as it used to. But if you do feel really free, not under any threat, Protobelt fits really well with her kit still. So you could definitely still opt for the Protobelt. Runes-wise, going for the Electrocute. Still a perfectly normal rune. Domination, I prefer Champion. You could also look at Weakness. Obviously, Brutal isn't an option anymore with the rework. Gathering Storm is doable if you don't feel confident. But I think Champion gives you a lot of early game power. More than any other rune will, obviously, but and I don't really like Weakness on Ahri as much because her charm is single target. Before, Weakness was something I enjoyed because you had the charm mark as well, where you did 20% extra damage to anybody that you hit with charm. But since they removed this aspect from charm and it no longer does the amplifier, I don't really like Weakness as much. I'd rather just play Champion because a lot of your fights and fighting style is actually about jumping to positions where you can get large spell combos throughout the enemy team, throw the first ability through like 4 or 5 people. And I don't find it's as much around, you know, just having that charm available. She's a lot more flexible in how you play team fights and how you approach situations. And I'm not as all in on the Weakness as I used to be. For Green Rune, pretty much always going to want to go for the name, which is Nullifying Orb. Pro player, by the way. You're pretty much always going to want to go for Nullifying Orb. You can go for something like Bone Plating if you're, again, against like a matchup like maybe Fizz or kind of like Zed, I guess, but I think Nullifying Orb is just the safest thing. And since you're building so much AP, it obviously scales really well. I don't think any other green runes are really as effective. And for blue runes, pretty much always going to want to go for Hunter Genius. Sweet Tooth is an option if you think you have a really hard matchup, but I think part of the charm of Ahri, is that she pretty much doesn't have any super bad matchups. You're pretty much always going to get something that's reasonable. So I don't think you ever really need to feel like you have to take Sweet Tooth. She's just a really strong laner in general. So I think Hunter Genius is pretty much a safe bet. Top of the spell-wise, Flash Ignite, pretty much the only option. In my mind, you could maybe go for a Flash Barrier, Flash Exhaust if you don't really feel confident, but I think Ignite is just, you know, it fits the playstyle of the Assassin and kind of going for that style. Playstyle-wise, you know, Ahri has a really great, solid early game. You shouldn't feel, you know, not confident late at all. Foxfire is really great even to take a level 1 now, and you just position really aggressively to trade with your opponent. As long as you're not taking too much minion damage, you pretty much always win the trade. Really easy to get an Electrocute proc by going, you know, Auto Attack, Foxfire, Auto Attack, and then using the movement speed from your second ability to run away as well. So you can get a really easy, effective trade in that style. Past that, just, yeah, using she has really good priority by using her first ability. So you can always be looking to roam to help out your jungler, help other lanes. And yeah, once you get to team fights, the general game plan is you're always looking for that initial reset. Pretty much as soon as you kill one person, the rest of the fight gets a lot more smooth. Because once you have a reset, it enables you to get another jump to position for another great combo. So you're always trying to look. You should basically always be thinking of like trying to look for a way to assassinate a single target and then use that to snowball into winning an entire team fight. Which is taking advantage of the new rework style. So yeah, Ahri definitely my top pick or top recommendation of this patch. Super excellent champ and really fun post rework as well. I enjoy it a lot more. Second champ I'd recommend amid this patch is Veigar. Veigar a little bit less safe than Ahri, doesn't have the mobility. Will take a bit more practice, but this champion is scaling super effectively right now. And even though his early game isn't that weak, he definitely feels really solid to me, even post the small nerfs he received. These are mostly scaling nerfs, and I think the way that Veigar plays, they don't really affect him too much, in my opinion. You're gonna want to rush the Ludens again. Same principle. Ludens is just really solid for any mage. Just gives you a lot of early haste, early wave clear. And then after that, I like to grab Tyria the Goddess at the very least. This part, your build path will branch generally. It depends on the game. If you're against like dive heavy compositions, with champions that are gonna reach you, that you just literally can't control with the cage. This is stuff like Zed, maybe Echo. I don't know. I mean, as far as mid laners go, there's not much past those two. Maybe like Gragas, if you think you're gonna get ulted into stuff, or you know, if you're really scared of stuff like Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, you can finish the Archangel straight away. This will give you the Seraphs as fast as possible. Seraphs is a really big mana shield still, which will help you keep a lot more safe in team fights and kind of like get another opportunity to drop another cage or flash away. But if you are feeling confident and safe, which I think in most games when you pick Veigar, I don't know if I think he is blindable, but maybe you want to wait until you see the enemy mid laner to be sure you want to take it. I think Ahri is much safer to blind of the two I recommend here, but Veigar is generally pretty fun. And yeah, if you are feeling more confident, just Luden's tier straight into Rabadon's Death Cap will give you a huge power spike. Rabadon's super effective on Veigar because of the way his passive works. Obviously, every time you hit an enemy with a spell or last hit a minion with a spell, you will gain 1 AP. So naturally he has super good synergy with Rabadon's, which amplifies your AP even more, so you're stacking like super exponentially. Once you finish the Rabadons, at this point you can finish the Seraphs again if you're not feeling too safe, or you can just go for more damage, get the Infinity Orb, or get the Void Staff. Void Staff generally something you want by like 4 or 5 items almost every game just because of base magic resistance. So most of the time I'm going to go for the Void Staff, but if you're really accelerated, you can rush for the Infinity Orb and just, yeah, obliterate your opponents. Enchant again. Stasis or QSS, depending on the game. More likely Stasis or this kind of champion. As far as runes go, Electrocute again. Just fits really well with Veigar's style. Can't really opt for anything else. Personally, I like the weakness in Domination. Compared to Ahri, his cage is obviously AoE, right? So it's way easier to hit more than one target, and you can apply the AoE weakness effect. Other options include Champion again for kind of early power, or just go for the Gathering Storm and sitting on even more scaling power. I don't think it's really necessary, but it is an option if you want to go for that. Green Rune once again, Nullifying Orb, and Hunter Genius for the Inspiration Tree. I think Sweet Tooth's a little bit more arguable on Veigar. He definitely isn't as strong a laner as Ahri is, but he's not that weak either. Like, you'd be surprised at how good his trades are in the early game, especially with a solid Electrocute proc. So you can opt for the Sweet Tooth if you're not feeling too confident in your late phase, but generally I think you should be pretty fine just going for Hunter Genius again. And Flash Barrier for summoner spells. If you're against something more all-in, like Zed, maybe Akali or Fizz, or even Ahri, I guess, is arguable, but I don't think it's a great example. You can choose the Exhaust. If there is a key moment for these kind of, like, when these assassins go in, you can Exhaust and probably survive. It's generally a bit better than the Barrier, but I think Barrier is generally really safe. As far as playstyle goes, early laning isn't as good as Ahri, but it is still pretty solid, especially once you get level 3 and you have your whole kit online. You could just cage most immobile targets and then just try to drop first, second ability on them, get an auto, easy Electrocute proc, and you actually do a surprising amount of damage. A key thing to keep in mind is that your stun does give you a stack of Electrocute as well, so if you do ever get a stun on someone, in lane phase, you could just W auto, Q auto, and then bam, you will proc Electrocute straight away, so you have a lot of upfront burst damage just from hitting the stun straight away. Otherwise, yeah, you could just look to auto first ability. Just try and, yeah, I mean, you want to be looking for minion last hits more than champion hits, but keep in mind that if they are trying to zone you because they're thinking like, oh, Veigar is weak, and they're like, he's just going to want to last hit with his abilities, if you land your first or second ability on a champion, instead of lasting a minion with it, you're still going to stack. So you're not actually losing anything. Some players will try to do that. They'll try to posture really aggressively to prevent you from stacking. But they'll just give you free hits on them instead. And then, since that's happening, you you're just stacking at the same rate, and as long as you can keep your farm up, it shouldn't even be a problem. Once you get level 5, you actually have a lot of burst. Definitely take some time to kind of like acknowledge your numbers. I think like as you get more familiar with Veigar, you'll see more and more situations where you can one-shot people, but you definitely want to kind of be aware and ready to when knowing your burst limits and kind of your limits on Veigar of when you can just drop cage on someone, see that your spells are going to hit, and then immediately line up the ult and just one-shot someone, or see that your allies are like bursting somebody, you could just throw the ult to help them out and just finish somebody off when they get the initial damage down and kind of surprise people. So once you get the ultimate online, definitely try to get just try to throw it out, aggressively when people look like they started to get low, because obviously it has the execute factor, and then just try to get familiar with when you can actually kill people. So moving on to support. First support I'm going to recommend is Rakan. I think Rakan is still insanely broken. If you get super good at him, he's definitely so effective. It can engage from so far away. I'm personally going to recommend the tank build. Sorry to all you AP Rakan enjoyers. If you do want to play AP Rakan, I think that is fine. But I think just tank is just the safer, more effective option. There's a reason it's pretty competitive, right? It's because it's more stable. Yeah, you might have a mindset where you feel like you have to do all the damage, but I think being alive for longer and getting more CC combos out is honestly a bit more consistent to carry games than trying to get fed and building a bunch of AP and trying to one-shot someone. So I'm definitely going to recommend the tankier build. Seed Jar first is just an amazing item. Seed Jar is super OP right now. The stats it gives for the price are just phenomenal. So that's why you generally see it in pro play a lot as well lately. Super cost-effective item. So just go ahead and rush for the Seed Jar. Well, actually, you're going to want to start Ruby and rush for Enchant normally. Proto Belt is still really solid on Rakan, even though it is a bit more expensive. So you're probably most games are going to want to go Ruby Crystal start, pick up your upgraded boots. This could be CDRs or Steel Caps or Mercury's Treads, just depends on the game. And then you're going to want to finish your Enchant. Pretty much always Proto Belt. It's just 2 gun on Rakan. It gives you so much more flexibility. And then once you get that, you can finish off your Seed Jar. After that, Zeke's is really solid on this champion, actually. It gives you really good resist based on the base HP. But also, if you want to pick up anti-heal, you should grab that after your Seed Jar. Bramble is obviously a really good option because enemies are going to hit you. And then once you kind of get to your core online of having like a Seed Jar, maybe a Zeke's or a Bramble and stuff like this, you can pick up just a whole host of tank items. You can go Warmogs if the enemy is quite mixed damage. Abyssal Mask is really good if you have AP allies and the enemy has strong AP champions. Abyssal's a really great item on this champ because you're obviously always at melee range and applying the buff for your allies. Outside of that, yeah, Deadman's I guess is an option, or Randuin's if you want to build more armor. But I think Zeke's is a really nice and safe item on this champ that kind of just fits well with this playstyle of just going in anyway with the ultimate and the engaging like that. You apply the Blizzard really effectively. You can get a lot of value out of it. As far as runes go, you're going to want to go for Aftershock. You can go for Electrocute, that'll be a bit more aggressive, but Aftershock gives you really good damage as well, honestly, if you stay in range, as well as making you a lot tankier. Weakness is a great choice because you're CCing so many enemies. Adaptive Carapace, really easy to take, just gives you base health and resist when you get lower. And Pathfinder's really nice if you want to play for a roaming style. Outside of Pathfinder, I guess you could go like Pack Hunter or something. I wouldn't say so. I'd say Pathfinder's just the best option. And then Flash Ignite for summoners. You can go Flash Heal if you want to be a bit more defensive, or if you think of more of a scaling lane. A Flash Ignite generally gives you really good kill pressure. With Rakan, you definitely want to be really active on the map. Try to look for opportunities to kind of leave your AD carry when they're safe so you can roam around, look for plays mid, look for plays in Baron lane, and kind of link up with your jungler because you're so good at playing with allies once you get level 3, having the dash on ally, using the aggressive second ability, and then being able to dash back makes you really safe. And you just have a lot of early game power, as well as great scaling. Once you get to level 5, get your ultimate online, just doing that ultimate second ability combo, basically just lock someone down for a really long time. Try to be aware of like just how much kill threat your allies have, because you have really great setups. You want to be setting up for your allies to kind of pick off people that you CC for a really long time. And yeah, in team fights, just super flexible champion, amazing engage. It's really easy to get a really good engage on this champ with Flash, Proto, Ultimate, second ability. You could definitely get value, and it's just his impact is pretty limitless, honestly. As long as you get better and better at this champion, you just get so much more value, and you can just be really phenomenal with regards to how you can impact the game. So definitely my number 1 recommended support. But number 2, I'm gonna have to find them in the list at this point because I had 5 set up, but now I've kind of run out of steam. There we go. I'm gonna recommend not Varus actually. I'm gonna recommend Varus support. I'm gonna recommend Nami. I think Nami This build kind of sucks. Not the build I recommend. I will actually change it around in real time. Nami is actually really solid right now because she fits the she's kind of fitting this changing meta of AD carries being a lot more effective and relevant in solo queue. It's getting more and more normal to see AD carries in the game again. And she fits really well with a lot of the meta ADCs that have kind of stepped up recently. So for Nami, you want probably going to want to rush the enchant. This is pretty standard on supports. If you're rushing an item on supports, it's probably not optimal. You're probably going to want to rushing the enchant. For Nami, that's either redemption or locket, just depending on what the enemy composition is. If you think you need to deal with some burst to maybe save your ADC, or another ally, locket could be really good. Otherwise, you can just go for the redemption to kind of like, keep your allies topped off during a team fight or during a push. CDR boots are pretty much going to be the standard. Almost always going to want to go for that. Actually, I think on Nami, you don't necessarily have to rush the enchant. It can kind of depend on the situation, because you might want to rush Ardent or Staff. I think, honestly, rushing Ardent's going to be better most of the time. But yeah, most games you're going to want to get Ardent and Staff. Which one first depends on your ADC. If you have an attack-focused ADC, like Lucian, Draven, Caitlyn, you're going to want to be going for the Ardent first, of course. And if you have something more spell-focused, Ezreal, maybe an AP carry with you, you can go for the Staff first. So just be cognizant of which one you want, but you're probably going to want to get both in most games anyway. Then you can go into an Athene's. Athene's is really nice. Just synergizes well with kind of like Nami's kind of easy damage output, where just her bubble, her second ability, and her ultimate just kind of give her free damage, which gives her blood stacks for the Grail, which is really effective. And after that, you'll probably never get this far, but you can just start building some AP. Just, just have some fun at 4-5 items. Realistically, you're never getting past 3 items of support, so you pretty much just only want to plan for that. These are kind of the most influential 3 items. As far as runes go, gonna want to get the Aerie. Aerie is just super great impact because she has a heal, which means she can get the shield version of Aerie, and she has and she's really good at poking in the lane phase. So it gives you a lot of poking power in lane. Weakness synergizes really well with her bubble and her wave, especially in team fights. Really easy to apply weakness to every target. Adaptive Carapace is fine again, just giving you a bit more tankiness in lane. Outside of that, you could just go for maybe, I don't know, I'd probably say just Adaptive Carapace, maybe Loyalty if you're feeling crazy. As far as inspiration goes, Pathfinder, again, really good option, helps you roam around the map and, link up with your jungler really easily. Outside of that, you can go Mana Flow Band if you think you need a little bit more. If you're not being able to manage your mana really well, definitely wouldn't recommend Latir or something like this on Nami. But if you're struggling to manage mana, I would say you could pick up a Mana Flow Band. Just give yourself a little bit more base mana. Very easy to stack it in the lane phase with your second ability. So, pretty easy choice there. Some of the spells, pretty much flash heal all the time. Can go Ignite if you're with maybe a Lucian, for example. And you can play an aggressive lane phase that way. But generally, flash heal is a lot safer with this kind of champion, because you don't want to be being too far up and being in Ignite range very often. And normally your ADC will have Exhaust, so you don't want to take Exhaust. Alright, moving on to jungle. Number 1 I've got to recommend, of course, is my main man, Lee Sin. Once again, this build sucks. I will fix it for you guys. I should have done this beforehand, but I guess I lost my way. Right, so for Lee Sin just obviously still a super phenomenal champ. I think this build is fine for the most part, this kind of style. You still go for the Yumu's first. Yumu's still super impactful. You don't want Brutal anymore. Brutal sucks. Do not take. Yumu's first just gives you a huge power spike into the Black Cleaver Sundera combo. Sundera is still super effective on Lee Sin, so much value. After you get these kind of core 3 items, you can look at whatever, Death Dance, Spirit Visage or Force of Nature if you need more MR, the Guardian Angel if you want to be able to trade, Sterak if you want a little bit more HP tankiness. But these core 3 damage items, obviously Lee Sin's a pretty difficult champion to pick up, but I think once you get familiar with him, it's just super easy to climb with, so easy to impact lanes and roam around the map, fight anybody, and especially in the current game state where dragons are super influential and stacking dragons is super valuable. Lee Sin's powerful early game enables you to get an early lead and then kind of control dragons really easily. So you can set up a win con that way, where even if your champion starts to fall off a bit, although I think in Wild Rift it's pretty debatable if he falls off as much as in PC, you can you set up that win con of kind of like having stacking dragons for your team by just dominating the early game. Runes wise, gonna be going for Conqueror still. Just not really a better rune for Lee Sin. Maybe Electrocute, but definitely wouldn't recommend it. And he does synergize really well with the physical vamp. He has a lot of single target spells. And the magic vamp I think works on his safeguard. Or Iron Will, sorry. Iron Will auto attack reset is magic damage, but you will get the value from Conqueror. The magic vamp will still apply. So you get even more healing in that regard. Adaptive Carapace pretty safe. You can also look at Bone Plating if you're against like maybe, you know, again, some of these more combo focused champions. And for Blue Rune, Pathfinder is an option, but actually I would actually recommend going for Demolish. Demolish on junglers is really solid right now because if you ever get a good gank, you could just start punching the tower. I'm using cellular data. I do not want to watch the video. Thank you, right? You can just start punching the tower and just grab early plates. Plates are really important right now, so yeah, if you ever get a good gank with Lee Sin, not only do you have really high early game gank pressure, but yeah, if you ever get a kill, you can just run up to the tower, pop your Demolish, bam, 2 plates for you and your laner that you just ganked for. So really easy to snowball an advantage that way and get a really big lead. So yeah, Lee Sin, just a really solid style. You know, don't be afraid to gank, play aggressively, fight. Just look for ways to snowball the early game. Yeah, like I said, a little bit harder to pick up, I guess, but I think it's fairly easy in mobile, especially compared to PC. And with a bit of practice, you should be able to play it pretty effectively. And I don't think you need to be a super insane god gamer, you know, super insect machine, constantly getting 5-man kicks to carry with this champion. You know, you just need to acknowledge that you're really strong early game. Just look for good windows to punish the enemy overextending, and snowball another lead. Make sure you secure dragons, and then yeah, you should be able to win from there. The second jungler I'm going to recommend is... He's not on this list. I'm sorry. I looked. He's not here. Is Wukong. Wukong, really solid right now, actually, especially post-buff. I would definitely recommend picking up the Wukong as a jungler. We're trying to show me Garen ghosting, right? Come on. For Wukong, you're going to want to rush in the Sundra. He just has insane synergy with this item. It's just, I don't know, Wukong is just so crazy right now. And the major buff he got on 3.3 is his second ability now allows him to jump over walls. This is something I should have mentioned with Lee Sin as well, but you can actually be really creative with your gank paths with these two champions. Most players will ward in, you know, the exact same way every single game, and especially at the same elo range. They ward very similarly. They're going to ward Tribrush, you know, they're going to ward River. You guys are used to the wards that you'll see, especially if you're a jungle main. You'll know the kind of wards that you'll normally come up against, but Wukong and Lee Sin can both generally circumvent these kind of aggressive wards by jumping over the pit walls with their second abilities, and this enables them to surprise gank people from places they wouldn't expect. Most people ward jungle entrances or Tribrush, and you could just jump over the pit and then gank them from the river, you know, either through mid or either the side lanes, and they just won't expect you to come from there. They'll be like, what the hell? Wukong was, how did he get there? I had a ward, you know? They just never expect this kind of thing. And getting these early kills could just enable you to super snowball really fast. So that's why both of these junglers are really solid, I think, right now, and definitely would recommend them. Wukong definitely more teamfight focused, really great teamfight utility with his ultimate, of course, and just insane wacko sustain. Like, he just goes full goblin mode when he starts smashing his first ability over and over again. Completely unkillable, especially if the enemy doesn't buy anti-heal. Let's be honest, it's solo queue. Who buys anti-heal, man? Like, maybe like one guy in 100 games, and it was probably by accident. So yeah, Wukong, super great state right now. Once you get through the Sundra, you're going to want to grab Black Cleaver. You can go for the Death Stance against most compositions again. As long as they've got 2 380 champions, the Death Stance is super valuable. Then you can look at stuff like the Spirit Visage, which obviously synergizes with, there's already great healing. You get the Guardian Angel, Sterax. He has a lot of great options once again. You're kind of looking for those bruiser options past that. Runes-wise, you're actually going to want to go Conqueror in the jungle. Don't want to go Grasp. But yeah, you're going to want to go Conqueror. Again, just plays into his sustain. You see, there's kind of a theme with a lot of the bruisers are recommending is they're just absolute sustain freaks. And yeah, they're just completely destroying these games. These items are getting nerfed next patch as well, by the way. The Sundra, the Black Cleaver, and the Death Stance. But I don't think it will make these champions dramatically weaker by any means. It would just kind of, you know, break them down a little bit. But especially in lower elo games or, you know, mid elo games, I don't think the changes are going to be enough to, like, super shake up the results. You know, I don't think people are going to be, you know, clutching situations because these items are a little bit weaker. So I wouldn't worry about it in that regard. Red Brood, Triumph, same reason. They just, you know, quadrupling down on the sustain as usual. Green Rune, Adaptive Carapace, Bone Plating again is an option, and then Demolish for Blue Rune for the same reason I said about Lee Sin, where yeah, you just get a solid gank off, and Wukong's ganks aren't bad by any means. Once you have red buff, you could just easily catch someone with the clone, mini dash into the third ability, and you have quite a lot of damage in the early game, so you can easily catch someone off. And again, the other thing about these ganks is you don't even need to necessarily kill the target. As long as you force them to back, you can still get this Demolish value just walking up to the tower. You know, try to push the lane, still give you lane to the CS. Don't take your lane to CS, junglers, alright? I'm watching you. But yeah, just push to the tower, take 1 or 2 plates, easy snowball, easy way to get ahead of the game, you know, by getting a little bit extra gold for you and your laner. So yeah, Wukong's definitely the second jungler I recommend. He's really solid right now. I definitely recommend Smite in the jungle. I think it's pretty good. Same for Lee Sin. Didn't mention that one, but I would say go for the smite, personally. Right, so ADCs. First ADC I'm going to recommend is Lucian. Lucian is pretty crazy right now. He did get a bit of a small buff with regards to Kraken getting a little better, but Lucian bot lane is definitely the forefront of the meta right now, dominating every lane that you'll see. You don't want to go for the crit build with him. That's Stormrazor, i.e. Solari Charge Blade, are your main 3. You may need to pick up Percentage Pen before the Charge Blade. Depends if you're snowballing. If you're snowballing, you could just go straight into the triple crit. Just start one-shotting people across the map, but if you aren't super ahead, you're probably going to go for Penetration third, because base armor is really high at Wild Rift. So once you kind of get to your third item, you generally need a way to mitigate armor that people have just gained naturally through stats. So yeah, you're probably going to want to go for the Serota / Mortal Reminder third. Depends if you need anti-heal. ADCs are a great applicator of anti-heal. So if you do see the enemy has Wukong, Lee Sin, Ahri, Draven, Nami, probably want to pick up some anti-heal. Just throwing the idea out there. So definitely consider it. Last item, it could be BT, it could be Navori, it could be RFC, it could be GA. Yeah, you just have a lot of options depending on what you need. Just kind of get familiar with different scenarios and, you know, choosing the right thing. Runes-wise, this is the only one of the only champions I still recommend Kraken Slayer on, even though they did get buffed and Conqueror got reworked. I think Lethal is just better on a lot of these ADC champions for the most part. But Kraken is still really solid. Red Rune, you're going to want to go Hunter Vampirism. This is the one I like the most. Just gives you a little bit of base lifesteal, especially because you don't build lifesteal Lucian's build unless you go for Glutton's boots, which I would really recommend. Yeah, you could, it just gives you a little bit of base lifesteal, gives you a little bit easier to sustain. Nullifying Orb is the green rune I recommend, especially because you build AD. And then you can go for Hunter Genius. Kind of same principle as before with the mid laners, but if you do feel like it's going to be a bit of a hard lane phase, maybe you're against like a Draven, a Caitlyn, you can opt for the Sweet Tooth to give yourself a little bit of extra sustain. So I didn't mention the enchants for Wukong and Lee Sin. For Lee Sin, I'd say go Stasis. Almost every game, and then Wukong can opt for Stasis or Stoneplate. Stoneplate did a really good spot right now for Wukong. Very easy for him to like mitigate the damage loss. But yeah, for Lucian enchants, I would say you probably want to go for the Stasis or QSS again, just defensive options. Can go for an aggressive Protobell, but kind of the same as Ahri. I think it's just really expensive now. 800 is a lot to drop on a damage champion compared to the 500 before, and it doesn't feel as nice to build on these champs, so I definitely probably recommend veering more towards the defensive options. Some of the spells in bot lane, it's going to want to be Flash Exhaust pretty much all the time. If your support was to go Exhaust for whatever reason, you can opt for the Barrier. I wouldn't say take heal on ADC. If your support doesn't want to take heal, I would say just go Barrier. If they do want to take Exhaust. But I guess you could take it if you really want to keep your Nami alive. You know, if you really feel attached to your Nami, it's definitely a great choice to go for heal. But yeah, Lucian generally super aggressive lane bully. I did mention before about dragon stacking being really effective, and having a really strong early game enables you to kind of like push for this dragon stacking playstyle. So the Lucian is one of the strongest lane bullies right now. That still has really great scaling. Draven does exist, but his scaling can be a little bit iffy, especially if he doesn't get those early kills. But Lucian is really, really, really effective right now. Scales really well, really strong lane phase. So great early, mid, late game. Pretty much effective at all portions of the game, and his early power does enable you to kind of pressure these dragons and kind of get the stacking going, which is really good for the meta. And the second ADC I'm going to recommend is, oh, he's not in this tab. Oh, that's right. He's in here. That's right. He's not in here, actually. He's in here. I'm recommending an AP carry for bot lane. I'm going to recommend Ziggs for you. I would not recommend Protobell. Ignore that one. Don't even ask about it. All right, don't even ask me. I think Ziggs actually is a really safe bot lane to choose, and I think it's kind of undervalued by a lot of solo queue players. But if you want to actually climb pretty effectively, you should probably veer away from playing all these crazy ADCs when it's just not necessary, and focus more on playing some of the stuff that's been better and competitive for a while. I'm actually going to recommend Ziggs for you guys for that reason. I think Ziggs is really easy to play, really easy to pick up. Super solid lane phase in bot lane. The only downside, you know, is that your teammates might rage when you pick an AP carry because they're too small brain to understand how Wild Rift works, but mages in the bot lane are generally really safe. Ziggs does not have kind of the problem most mages have, where his early game is that weak. He has a lot of early trading power with his passive and his first ability, which can enable you to still look for kills in lane and play aggressively if you want to. Definitely no reason you can't do that. Once again, going for the Ludens first. Ludens enables you to kind of have that early game aggressive burst, and kind of like Veigar, you're gonna want to go into the Tier of the Goddess to kind of keep your mana pool going. Again, if you do feel like you need to finish the Seraph, if the enemy has like Zed Fizz, Akali, these dive-heavy assassins that you think you need a little bit more safety, you can opt to finish the Seraph straight away. Otherwise, just delay it. Go for the Rabadons. Maybe go for, Infinity Orb / Void stuff. Picking up whatever you need. Liandry, also a pretty reasonable option on Ziggs if the enemy's like really tank heavy. Like, you definitely want to get the Void stuff, but the Infinity Orb's pretty debatable. Yeah, could be a Liandry, could be a Banshees, could be a Lichbane, I guess, if you think you have a lot of space to auto-attack. Definitely not the worst option I've ever heard in my life. Runes-wise, you're going to go for the Airy nowadays. Conqueror on Ziggs got pretty dramatically nerfed with the patch, so I wouldn't recommend going for Conqueror anymore. I like Champion as the domination rune of choice. You can also go for Weakness. His third ability is a pretty big range, so it's pretty easy to apply it on a large pool of enemies and kind of slow them all and get value that way. But Champion's probably a bit easier to go for. Again, you can go for Gathering Storm if you want to play more towards the scaling. Green Rune's going to be nullifying all pretty much all the time, not really another choice. And then for Blue Rune, Inspiration, you want to go for Hunter Genius again, or you can go for Sweet Tooth if the matchup's looking pretty rough, and you think you might need a bit of extra fruit sustain. But Hunter Genius is really easy to take and just stack kind of freely and not really worry about it. Just take it and forget it. Some of the spells, again, pretty much going to be Flash Exhaust almost all the time, unless for some reason you want to go Barrier in the bot lane, but I'd say have the Exhaust ready. I think one of the advantages of Ziggs is it enables you to round out team comps very effectively. A lot of players, especially, in lower elo, they're just Zed 1-tricks, Yasuo 1-tricks, just lock it in, triple AD topside, not a care in the world, and you get to go pick ADC, and you're like, I want to play an ADC because that's my role, but, if I pick ADC here with full AD, the enemy has Rammus, Malphite, and they pick them first too, but for some reason my teammates just locked in AD after AD champion, just completely ignoring everything that was going on the enemy side of the draft. And in those scenarios, I think having a Ziggs available is a really great choice. And I don't think Ziggs is bad in the early game. I think when you get familiar with this champion and his damage, you'll see how well you can trade in the early game when you get used to playing him. And his scaling is just super phenomenal. Once you get to like 3-4 items, you just start throwing ult for fun, and you'll just see that you do 1k damage to everybody in the enemy team when you land the ult of them. And if you just play really, really well around your ranges and your poke power, you could definitely easily decimate enemy teams with just the massive amount of damage this champion still puts out. Like, even though he's been nerfed more than a few times, his damage output has never really been targeted too much, and you could definitely still easily carry games and, carry entire team fights with just a single really well-placed ultimate into, like, one good bomb into, like, a minefield, and then you just blow up 3 people instantly. So, yeah, honestly, I'd say I'd recommend giving Ziggs a try if you want to play, a safe, powerful champion that, scales really well, but isn't that weak early game. Can still definitely get value. A little bit of a different play style, but really good to round out composition. So that's why he's my second champ that I recommend for bot lane right now. There are other ADCs, that are still fine, but I think Lucian is like head and shoulders above most of them. And most of the other ones are a bit weirder, and I don't think they necessarily go above a lot of the mage champions that are available. But yeah, that's going to be it. 2 champions for every role that I think you guys should be playing right now if you want to climb in solo queue. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like. It really helps out the channel. Also subscribe for more content like this. Like I said, I'll probably be doing a 3.3A tier list in the next couple weeks, so you can look forward to that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you guys on the next one.